Now I'm going to be tying this fly here. Believe it or not, this is a dry fly. It's a pattern I tied in the early 80s, and this was a pattern I would always use basically in the Herl locks for royal brown trout, and well, you get the rainbows as well, but it was originally tied for the wild fish. Now if you need a terrestrial pattern, this was a cracking fly to have. Basically what I called it was a long hackle dry. Now the original fly was just tied with a not standard hackle. Problem being the fish would ignore it. The odd one would take it, but just they weren't too interested in it. And I started making the hackle much longer to spread the weight of the fly. Now, but this was the best. So when you cast this, basically put your floating on it on the hackle. It'll line the surface but give a dimple. If you cast it just the edge of the ripple where the fish are feeding, they just naturally come up and take it. They take it with a lot of confidence. So these flies are certainly, this style of fly is certainly worth tying. It's basically like an old hopper pattern. Hoppers, we didn't have hoppers with legs and stuff. It was basically long hackle dries in this case. This is what I used. Now, it's quite easy to tie. I'm using a light wire hook, well, a medium wire hook. This is a Kamasan. It's a B170 and it's a size 14. When I tie it, I would say the 14 was the main size that I did use at the time. 16s, you could go an 18 even with it, because it's still a great partner in an 18. And you can go obviously above with 12s, 10s, and you'll still catch fish with it. And you can change the colour, I mean obviously pure black and so on. But this is the original fly, and I still tie them. I'm still tying them yet, even 30 years on. So basically, thread I'm going to be using. So I'm using a uni thread 80 in black. I'm just going to run the wax through it. Run it back onto the bobbin. And we start at the eye. Come down about 3 or 4 mil or so, and then trim away the waste piece. Come back up, stop it a mil or so from the eye. We tie in some, this is just standard red wool, bright red wool. Now it helps you to see the fly, but this fly, I mean, you obviously, the advantage with it, you can actually pull it below the surface, and the red wool is a good aiming point, especially for wild brown trout. It's a great pattern. So before I used to do the body and then the hackle and then tie this in, but I prefer now to tie it on. I'll tie it in first. Come down, come over the top with your scissors, cut it at an angle. I just open out the wool, and then you want an angle cut like this towards the back, and then we wind down. That angled cut will give you a tapered body, as you can see there. It's tapering away because of that tapered cut. Now, to protect the body, which is Peacock Herl dyed black, I'm going to use a extra small copper wire, 2/3 a shank, tie that the length of that so there's no lumps and bumps. This is my dyed black Peacock Herl, just normal Peacock Herl dyed black, just to darken it down. Get a lovely colour with it. Just tie it in by the tips, and you line them up, then tie it in nice and tight. Thread up, as I say, 2/3 a shank, and then I'm going to wind the Peacock Herl towards myself. It's the weakest fibre in the fly, so you need to protect that, and by what's going to protect it is the copper wire. And the wire, as you wind up, will catch in more of the herl if it's wound the opposite way. Now you tie it in, basically you go across the herl, a turn, and you do a turn onto the hook, repeat that, and that locks it in. Trim this away. When you rub the fly 4 or 5 times on the way up, come up with the thread, 90-degree bend into the wire, and then tidy. Now I want to thin the body down a wee bit more. I want it nice and thin, so what I'm going to do here is use my scissors, trim the herl all the way around. You don't have to do this, but this is how I like to tie it. I like a nice thin body. I want the colour of the herl, oh, it's still there. Just take your time, tapering it towards the back. Just rubbing it with my fingers. This will basically soften it up. More natural look anyway. It's fine. Now the hackle I'm going to be using, it's really the roughest hackle you could find. This is an Indian cock cape. It's got very little marking on it. It's got just a tiny bit of natural brown or red in it, which will give the legs the colour that you're looking for. And you want one of the larger hackles like this one. Now you're going to tie it in by the tip because you want the best part of the hackle or the colour up here, which I'll basically bring out. But what I want to do as well is add a bit of the darker part of the hackle as well, but I don't need the fibres. So what I like to do is make my own herl, as they call it. Just trim it either side to there. It was just the way I tied it, it was just the way I liked it. So I wanted to thicken the thorax up. Didn't want any more of the hackle, so I thought that was the easiest way to do it, and it just worked out really well. So I'm going to fold back the tip. Now just find the tip of the hackle here, take it out, and then you rub it with the tip of the scissors just to fold it a wee bit. It's going to moisten the wool just out of the way. Just draw back these fibres. Now this is the front of the hackle. It's facing towards the eye, so you're tying it like a wet fly, which is what makes it unusual being it's a dry fly. But when you gink this up, you'll see how it sits on the surface. It's really nice. It's more natural than some of the standard dry flies. Just winding it down now. I'm onto the cut ends of the hackle, which is thickening up the thorax, just what I want to do. The last turn's going to be in front of the head, so just bring it in front. But with the thread really nice and tight, you can fold it back, tie in front. Just ignore the hackling out. Whip finish. We can either cut away or break this off. Yeah, trim that. I prefer to break off if I can. And that's your long hackle dry. Basically a heather fly. It's like a small gnat. It'll represent a few wee beasties, as we say in Scotland. And the fish just like this colour combination. We trim the wool. Trim it, you can keep it quite long at first, see what it's like. But I like to trim it about that length, say 2 or 3 mil away from the shank of the hook, so above the eye. Now when you gink this up, or whatever you use to float your fly, just rub it onto the body and then the hackle and bring it to the top like this. And what it does, as I say, it gives a nice dimple and impression on the surface. And that's basically what the fish are seeing more than anything, is they see that first, because they're feeling quite close to the surface and they see the mark. And if you're fishing along the edge of a ripple, now I've caught in bright sunshine, middle of the day with this fly, when it's really hard going, and the fish come onto it like it was just so natural to them. And when you have a fly that does that, you've got a great pattern. So clean up the eye, just put some varnish on it. Use your needle to take away any excess varnish out the eye. And there we are, and that's the long hackle dry, which is, I say, is it will represent a lot of terrestrial patterns, like especially the heather fly and any gnats about. So I hope you enjoyed that.